The destroyer's searchlight licked the sea like a white-hot blade, skating past our bow by inches. Engines idled. Wood creaked. We drifted in the moon's shadow off Vella Lavella, 23 men pretending we were part of the water. I kept one hand on the radio that I wasn't allowed to touch, and the other on the bulkhead to feel our boat breathe. Behind that Japanese tin wolf, 3 dark transports groaned with bodies, thousands of them, sleepwalking toward Kolombangara. The date stamped itself into me. July 19th, 1943. In 4 minutes, we'd speak the only language the Pacific understood at night. Fire and wake. I wasn't a hero. I was a set of ears with a pulse. But even I could feel the boat's heartbeat rise. Mac, the skipper, stood still as a gun barrel. Dutch, our walking slide rule, whispered bearings like a prayer. 2 other PTS crouched behind the island's shadow, waiting for our breath to turn into teeth. Names William Patterson, Radioman 2nd Class, United States Naval Reserve. If you've ever wondered whether plywood floats when you fill it with gasoline, torpedoes, and 20-something-year-olds with more nerve than sense, the answer is yes. That night, we were the rumor the enemy didn't believe. And rumors, if you feed them enough octane, become facts. People ask what it felt like being part of a secret truth. We didn't feel secret. We felt mortal. Every torpedo was a coin we paid up front, so some kid in a foxhole wouldn't have to pay later. We knew one thing only. If those transports reached Kolombangara, the ledger would be written in American blood. To understand how toys with fangs humbled steel, you have to understand the dark in 43. The Japanese didn't just fight at night. They owned it. Since Savo Island, they'd turned moonlight into doctrine. No radar, no panic, just eyes and choreography. Tokyo Express ran like a subway, on time, in black. Our big ships had better screens and bigger guns, but in those tight island throats, they were clumsy giants swatting ghosts. So the Navy did something un-Navy. It bet on speed, audacity, and wood. Patrol torpedo, PT, 80 feet of laminated mahogany, pushed by 3 Packards that drank fuel like sailors on payday. 4 tubes with Mark 13, a 20mm Oerlikon, twin .5 zeros that stitched the dark with red threads. 15 minutes of hell in the magazines, then home or gone. I'd come from boats where steel meant safety. The first time I stepped onto PT-164, I thought somebody was playing a joke. No armor worth naming. Quarters so tight you dreamed in shifts. You didn't lean on bulkheads, you apologized to them. But then I met Mac. He'd been at Pearl, Midway. He was done being a target. On these things, he said, we stop asking permission and start writing endings. Our crew was a crooked deck of aces. Dutch, a Yale math man who did torpedo angles in his head like card tricks. Charlie in the engine room, a street poet of horsepower who could make Packards purr or howl on command. Paddy O'Brien, torpedo man, who polished those Mark 13s like they'd write his name in history. Me, I listened, to static, 2 engines, to the ocean when it decided to talk. Training taught us to unlearn the Navy. Fight fair? Don't. Telegraph your moves? Don't. Fear the dark? Make them. We practiced firing on a trampoline, the sea at 40 knots, until our stomachs and our aim agreed to a truce. We learned to navigate by smell, by the pitch of surf against unseen reefs, by the hush that islands put on wind. Rendova wasn't a base so much as a rumor with fuel drums. Palm frond roofs, a dock that groaned, the air rotting sweet with heat and diesel. And always, from New Georgia, the low thunder of someone else's bad night. Our orders were a simple sentence with 1,000 complications. Stop the express. Our first patrol? A blood lesson. A float plane saw us. 4 destroyers turned the sea into a broken mirror. PT-158 took a 5-inch kiss and didn't exist after. 12 men became spray. We brought that silence home and Mac said, soft and absolute. We don't duel. We ambush. Or we die. So we learned the shadows. 1 engine only. 2 asleep. Noise cut to a whisper. We tucked into radar blind spots behind islands, talked in pinpricks of light the enemy couldn't read, and let instinct, ugly, wonderful instinct, do the rest. Coast watchers on the hills fed us truth at great personal cost. Islanders paddled out with eyes like lighthouses. Intelligence, rumor, luck. We used it all. July 18th, the hill ghosts radioed a present. Big transports, light leash, Blackett Strait, narrow water forces, honest choices. Mac put us on point with 168 and 171 flanking. Commander Specht looked at us and said the quiet part loud. Those ships do not reach Vella. If you have to turn yourself into a torpedo to stop them, do it. We loaded for one job, break spines. Paddy set the fish shallow and hot. I set my nerves too low and lied to them. Dutch plotted like he was painting. Air, tide, moon. A PI in the belts. Let glass and steel complain about it later. At 2030, we slipped our leash and let the dark adopt us. By 2300, we were ghosts at Vella Lavella's hip. Engines breathing through mufflers. The sea had a 2-foot temper, bad for aiming, good for hiding. I listened, and the night told me something was coming. At 2347, the radio winked. 3 big, 2 escorts, bearing 280, 18 knots. Mathematics put a hand on my shoulder. It was our turn. At 0018, Dutch saw them. Blacker shapes against the star field, orders inside their spacing. 2 greyhounds leading, 3 cattle behind. 1 greyhound herding the rear. No lights, just confidence. Mac's plan? Make a zipper of their formation and break the teeth. 168 from port, 171 from starboard. We go blunt straight through the middle at the lead transport. It sounded like madness, which meant it might work. All ahead slow, he whispered. We let them come. At 2,000 yards, you could count the heartbeats between their prop beats. At 1,500, you could name bolts. At 1,000, I could smell paint and men. 3 clicks, the quietest battle cry I've ever heard. And our engines went from church to riot. The bow climbed. The night cracked. Their lookouts were hunting submarines or destroyers, not wasps at 40 knots. We were already inside their geometry when they found their fear. I hosed a destroyer's bridge with .5s. The tracers wrote rude words on glass. Fire 1, fire 2. Paddy sent our first pair at 600 yards, absurdly close. The wakes drew white knives toward a converted liner stuffed with soldiers. A searchlight smashed into us. Pure noon. 25s started combing the sea with green fingers. Rounds stitched water around us so tight we were breathing spray. Then our torpedoes stopped being predictions. 1 hit just aft of the bridge, a punch you felt in your teeth. The second broke her back. The ship lifted, split, and everything inside her became a terrible chorus. We didn't cheer. We had nothing left in us for that. 168 spoke next. 2 hits into a ship full of ammunition. The night erupted like a volcano lost its temper. Heat slapped us flat. The sky rained metal and fire onto our wooden skin. We stomped out small apocalypses and kept moving. The destroyers tried the obvious answer. Ramming. A knife bow came for our ribs. Mac bullied the throttles past their stops. We pirouetted with 10 feet to spare. I dumped a belt into their bridge from spitting distance and hoped someone important was standing where the sparks went. 171 ate searchlights and 25s before they could finish their run. A round kissed a torpedo casing and didn't wake it. Thank the arming vanes. They had to break off, smoking and chewing water. We turned to try again, but the first miracle was spent. Searchlights were sawing the sea into squares. 5-inch guns finally found angles. One honest hit would have made us a rumor again. "Last fish, then vanish," Mac shouted. Paddy fired. The target captain combed our wakes, slid parallel, and let both torpedoes write harmless lines. So we did the sane thing. We ran like sinners. Engines at a scream, weaving through geysers. Behind us, 168 planted one more sting into the ammo ship, and the strait lit like the 4th of July for the dead. 2 transports gone. Thousands who would not reach our boys. The 3rd and the Greyhounds lived, rattled and angrier than doctrine allows. 5 miles south we found each other, 3 boats afloat by stubbornness and luck. 171 bleeding, 1 engine sulking, holes gobbling the sea, so we plugged them with mattresses and curses and hands. 168 looked like a hedgehog kissed by shrapnel. We were scorched and holed, 1 gun barrel cooked, egos intact. Sunrise brought float planes with bad intentions. We became scenery, palm fronds for hats, engines dead, breath shallow. They droned past, blind to the island that had adopted 3 wooden sins. It took 14 hours to sneak a 3-hour ride home, but all of us put our boots back on Rendova's splinters. Debrief wanted everything. Calibers, timings, reactions, what fear smelled like. What we said became pages other crews would carry into nights we'd never see. The radios told us something better. The enemy now believed in ghosts. New American fast torpedo craft from nowhere, they called us. They stopped trusting the dark. Convoys grew bigger and slower. Escorts multiplied. Searchlight float planes combed the sky. All of that meant fewer rifles and rice making shore. The psychology mattered as much as the math. Commanders canceling ops, soldiers waiting for ships that never came. A myth broke. Night belonged to whoever was willing to risk more in it. The bill came due, always. We lost boats to mines, to daylight, to the long coin toss you make when you choose speed over armor. We buried names we still say under our breath. And yet, on balance, wood and nerve bought victories steel couldn't buy at that hour. I rotated stateside, then back again to newer boats with radar. Thin armor around the cockpit. Better fish. But the soul never changed. Surprise, speed, audacity. The enemy tried countering with hunters, better sets, suicide craft. You can patch holes in doctrine. You can't be everywhere at midnight. Mac lived to wear more stripes and teach destroyers how to think like knife fighters. Dutch went back to Yale and mapped oceans with the same calm that threaded us through destroyers at 40 knots. Charlie built engines that made cars talk back. Paddy wrote the book on torpedoes and never stopped bragging about his fish that night. He earned it. History loves big silhouettes. Midway, Leyte, iron names that throw long shadows. But tucked inside those shadows are little boats that changed how navies think. You see it today. Fast attack craft, missile boats, special operations rides, the DNA of plywood and Packards hiding inside radar angles and composites. The Japanese had a phrase by the end of '43, mosquito boat terror. Post-war, their admirals admitted what we felt. We didn't just sink ships, we stole certainty. They had to plan around shadows, spend steel and fuel against rumors. That's victory too. We did foolish things and survived by inches. We made mistakes that should have written our names on the bottom. But we also proved a simple, dangerous thesis. When convention fails, ingenuity and courage rewrite the manual. Plywood can humble armor. A dozen men can reroute a war night by night. Ask me if I'm proud, and I'll give you July 20th. 3 small boats went where they shouldn't, broke a convoy in half, and slipped back into the dark they'd stolen. Not because we were fearless, because we were afraid and moved anyway. That's the lesson I keep. Speed, surprise, audacity, and the knowledge that sometimes the smallest hull carries the heaviest history. If you ever hear an engine idle like it's holding its breath, if you ever see a seam of white wake writing in ink across black water, remember the Mosquito Fleet. We weren't built to take hits. We were built to make them count.